There have been cynics, I suppose, less witty, bitterer, and less unepigrammatically epigrammatic than Bowen Hilliard. It would be very easy to dismiss Hilliard as another misanthrope if it were not that the man advertises himself as a sage. After deciphering his key sentence, which is, "To die in terms of a subsequent humanity is a form of emotional sophistication that may be achieved only by the people of that nation which puts its philosophy in action." I have been compelled to believe that Bowen Hilliard's book would have been more accurately entitled The Artist in Bellyache Inglorious. We have had enough rot these days. Soon he could smoke a cigarette, a last futile cigarette of distaste. And yet, amused with himself, there was a hope remaining that it would taste a little better than all the thousands preceding it. He was waiting for the dawn, wanting to see a last day, hoping, too, that he would feel this dawn more intensely than any that had come before. He heard the Japanese outside, firing, then the Indian answering, then silence once more. The Indian, with his neat, efficient motions at the gun, aroused his interest. For a short while he thought of the Indian and himself in terms of they, but he could not feel it. At last he compromised by bellying over to the window and relieving him of the gun. The Indian, April 1942, 4th day, 5:30 a.m. Some guys are born to go to whorehouses. The trouble with Rice started when he was adding up his accounts. Perched by the window, his knees bent, feeling the tight roll of his bottom against the backs of his heels, he had just picked off a Jap who was trying to sneak down the side bushes, and in relaxing had thought to himself that made 14 he had bagged. Rice knew what he knew. He always used to think that. He knew when he had hit a guy and when talking would get him out of it. He knew how to tell when a whore was tired and, if you felt like talking, which wasn't often with Rice, how to pick out the right tired whore. He also knew not to think when thinking made you crazy, which is what made his thinking now so unusual. He'd been trading bursts with the Japs every 10 minutes or so, feeling it was the slack season. Naturally, he'd been fighting so long in so many places, he had gotten to the point where if he wanted to think, he could do it while he fired a gun. And he had been telling himself with pride that of the Japs that had been killed, he had knocked off 13 of 15, as near as he could tell. He had to admit that he'd been firing the gun more than Wexler or DeLucci, but then they'd gotten killed, which had meant no one spelled him at the gun. And he knew that your accuracy went down when you were tired. So it all balanced out, except that he couldn't figure what percentage 13 out of 15 was. He tried for a while to work that out, but he quit school too early at the Indian reservation in Oklahoma, where whores were born, he used to say sometimes, and he didn't have much luck. He was also thinking that they'd held out for pretty long, although the Japs only had one machine gun and no flares. The thing was, they hadn't gotten any more guns because the main body was probably halfway to tinder by now, he guessed. He was estimating about how, for an afternoon and a night, they had killed off 15 Japs to only 3 of theirs, and how at the very worst, the last profit and loss would be 15-5. This was where the trouble came in. He stopped. He realized he'd been figuring himself in the 5. That meant they got him, the Indian. It hit him that way. He hadn't figured on being killed since the First World War. He'd been 18, and it had been in below, or wasn't it? All he remembered was that he'd been sick and scared, and now, although there was something in his stomach, it wasn't anything like that. He felt kind of surprised, almost. He just never figured it that way. With the things he'd done, the Marines in Nicaragua, Bolivia on his own.